If somebody were to start with just three of the principles, three of the themes from your work to help them improve their outlook on life, their relationships, and their mental health, where would you guide them to start?
Well, these would be sort of the three fundamental principles that I think are threads throughout all of my books. Number one is to be extremely outer directed. And most of us, particularly in the 21st century, are increasingly more and more self absorbed. A lot of it's a function of technology and social media, et cetera, et cetera. And what you really want, where true power lies, is the ability to understand the people around you on a higher level, to be able to get inside of their worlds, to understand what motivates them, to understand their needs and their desires and their wants, not your needs, which you know very well. You need to turn to people for help, for advice, for a job or whatever, where you need other people to, work with you, you need favors done. Most people begin by thinking of what they want and how great they are and how wonderful their idea is. And I want you to flip the script and look at the other person and go, what do they need? What do they want? How brilliant are they? Or what are they missing? And so the ability in a seduction setting, in a marketing setting, in a power political setting, in the office, or in a relationship, the ability to get outside of yourself and inside the mindset of the other person is a skill that will pay you dividends for your entire life. It's extremely important. I talk a lot about having a sense of urgency in life. In my book on warfare, The 33 Strategies of War, the most important chapter in there, at least to me, is what I call the death ground strategy. And essentially, it's you go through life thinking that you have all of this time to accomplish your goals, to get what you want in life, but it's a mirage. It's an illusion. You could die tomorrow. Life is very short. You don't have these endless vistas of time. You're wasting time. You don't have a sense of urgency or desperation. And this is how the human brain works. And you need to understand this so deeply is that if we don't feel a sense of urgency, if we don't feel like we have to get something done, if we don't feel our future doesn't depend on it, then we don't put all of our energy into the task, and then it usually doesn't come out very well. We usually fail in it. But if we feel, so this image comes from Sun Tzu's Art of War, where he says, put an army with its back to a mountain or its back to the ocean, where they either have to fight and win or they die. And so you have a sense that you have to finish this project, you have to sell this idea, you have to write this book, or you're going to fail miserably. That mountain is on your back and you're going to die unless you succeed. When you feel that sense of urgency, when you feel so connected to what you're doing, you can move mountains. You will find the energy. Energy is not a function in your life of your body, of just being healthy. It's a function of your mind. People don't realize that. So when you feel like energized and excited by something, your body will supply the necessary adrenaline to get it done. So that would be the second principle. The third principle, which is an extremely important theme in the laws of human nature, is self awareness. We all want to be able to improve ourselves, right? That's why we buy books like my books, listen to podcasts like this. But you cannot begin to improve yourself. You cannot begin to develop yourself or evolve in any way unless you understand who you are, unless you look deep inside, unless you realize that you have flaws, that there are parts of your nature that you can't control. You have emotions that are getting in your way, that are causing you problems. Your first tendency whenever anything goes wrong is to blame other people, to blame your parents, to blame your colleagues, to blame your friends, to blame the world. I want you to turn around and go, look at yourself. Most of the time, there's something you have done that is the source of what has gone wrong. So you want to be able to look at yourself, look at your flaws, and you also want to be able to know who you are. What makes you unique? What makes Doug Bobst unique? What makes him different? What makes him unlike anybody else? What separated him as a child that is like, what are his interests? What I call his life's task. Is it to have a podcast? Is it to write a book? Is it to be a basketball star? To become president of the United States? The ability to know who you are and not listen to what your parents say, to what your peers say, to cut out all the bullshit that people throw at you and to say, this is who I am, this is what I love, this is where I'm going. So, knowing having self awareness about your flaws and about your strengths is the third most critical skill.
And those three things, I think if people can just learn to embrace those three principles you just talked about, I think they will get so far in life. And I know beneath all of this, the fundamental thing that people must do in order to have power over their lives, I've heard you say, is to master your emotions, the ability for somebody to be able to master their emotional self, and I think this is important when things get hard, when somebody says something to them that they might not agree with, and so on and so forth. Like, why do you think that it's so important for people to learn how to master their emotions, and what are a few ways that people can do so?
Well, there's a lot of misunderstanding around that concept. I'm not saying that you need to repress your emotions, that you need to become like Spock in Star Trek or something like that. Emotions have a very positive value. I couldn't write the books that I write without being so excited by what I'm writing, by loving it, but also hating a lot of my motivation is things that I hate in the world. Emotions play a huge role in your motivation and your energy levels. I'm not at all talking about repressing them. That won't get you anywhere. What I'm talking about is understanding them. There's a huge difference. So, take a scenario where you feel angry, okay? You wake up one morning and something isn't right, and then later in the day, you lash out at a person in your office or in your family or whatever. And then your first thought is, well, I'm angry because of what they said or what they did, right? And you don't understand your own emotions. You're just in the moment and you don't realize that your anger actually probably comes from something else. Could come from something that happened the day before or a week before or something that happened in your childhood. And so instead of reacting to your emotions, instead of getting angry, instead of feeling envy, instead of feeling excited or upset or whatever it is the emotion, I'm asking you to step back, take a half step back in that moment and go, why am I angry? Is it really justified? What is the source of it? What am I really, really reacting to? So you want to build in just this few seconds of stepping back instead of reacting. And you have no idea the power that lies in just those few seconds, right? Because it gives you the ability to think about it and analyze the situation instead of react. And what causes so much pain in your life, so much grief in your life, is that you're constantly reacting to what other people are doing, what other people are saying. Your emotions are causing you to make all kinds of mistakes, to say stupid things, to invest in bad investments, to follow the wrong career path, to get too upset by what people say. So I'm not saying don't get upset. I'm not saying don't be angry. I'm not saying don't fall in love. I'm saying step back and look at yourself for those few seconds and go, do I really need to react in this situation? Is it really that important? Is there a better way to handle it? Or is there something else behind this emotion? Am I actually not angry at this person, but frustrated with myself? Going through those steps is incredibly, incredibly powerful. And that will allow you to master your emotions, not repress them. I have in my book, I compare it to a metaphor of a person riding a horse, right? The you on the horse, the rider, is your rational self. The horse is your emotions. That horse is extremely powerful. It'll get you in a lot of trouble if you're not careful. That horse will go trotting off some direction. It will throw you off. You'll have an accident, etc. You have to learn how to control it. If you've ever ridden a horse before, like I did when I was younger, if you are too controlling, if you're trying to tell the horse, no, don't go there, you hold the reins really high and you make the animal upset, it won't go anywhere, it won't do anything, it won't cooperate. You have to learn how to back off a little bit, how to use that horse, how to use your emotions for energy, for purpose, for getting things done, but for not constantly reacting and causing pain and mistakes in your life. So that's what I really mean.
Yeah, and thanks for clarifying that because I think sometimes that can be misunderstood. I mean, what I gathered from your work is what you kind of said, but I know some people they might say, "Well, does mastering my emotions does that mean that I just don't show emotion at all?" It just means no, like you want to do your best to kind of have some sense of control over them, like you just said. I want to talk about an emotional time in your life when you had your stroke and you faced like this near death experience. How did that shape who you are like as today in 2023? And then during those moments when you were coming out of it and you got your cognition back and you were back to feeling somewhat normal, was there any thoughts going through your head about, wow, like I regret not doing this, or I need to actually do more of this because you got so close to death?
I don't know what it is about me. Maybe it's a flaw or maybe it's not a flaw, but I've never ever felt regret about a choice I've made in life. I'm probably overstating. I'm sure there have been moments where that's not completely accurate, but in general, I have this thing, this belief that things are happen for a reason, usually for the better, right? So before my stroke in the early 90s, before my success, I was pretty miserable. I was very depressed. I even had moments where I must admit I was somewhat suicidal. And then I suddenly hit it right with the 48 Laws of Power, which this man bankrolled Joost Elfers in 1996. And then it changed my life. But in looking back prior to that, and all the things that in the moment might have seemed mistakes, had a purpose to them. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about power. I learned a lot about manipulation. I became hungry for success. My ambition was fed. So everything happened for a reason. Now, it's hard to apply that to the stroke, quite honestly, because it's a miserable experience, you know, physically. So the near death part of it is very interesting. It makes you suddenly aware of how amazing it is to be alive. It makes everything more intense. Just this morning, I was thinking about, I meditate every morning and I was looking out the window. I was going, this like incredible world that you live in, this beautiful view that you have, it may not exist for you. You might have been dead, right? And so it intensified my love for the things that are. On the other hand, physically, it's shattering. I can't take a walk. Like I used to hike, I was very physical. I would swim almost every other day. I would take hikes. I had a mountain bike. Suddenly that's ripped away from you. A lot of people suffer these kinds of things in life, and it's very difficult. So I shouldn't think that I'm the only one, but it was very, very traumatic, as well as I can't type. So for a writer now writing another book, these are challenges. And so I don't look back and go, wow, I'm so grateful that I lost all my physical ability. But I've had to accept it and I've had to learn how to turn it into something else. I can't get bitter. I can't get upset. I can't go, damn it, I wish this hadn't happened. It did happen. I have to accept it. It has taught me incredible degrees of patience. I tell you out there, you don't know what patience is until you face a moment like this. I mean, imagine tying your shoes in the morning takes 15 minutes. Getting dressed can take 40 minutes. Preparing your breakfast can take forever, right? You have to find a whole other level of patience in your life that you never had before. So you have to work on yourself and you have to like go, well, Robert, you're coming far. You almost died. You're doing the best that you can. You have to accept these things. I had to do a lot of work on myself, to be honest with you. And it's a work in progress. And some days I fail, and some days I don't fail, but it's making me stronger. It's building emotional skills that I never had before. And it's making me appreciate the little things in life, because I was in a coma, not for very long, and, but I came very close to dying in that. I was driving my car when it happened, and my wife was in the car. She basically got me to pull over, and if I hadn't, I'd be dead or I'd have terrible brain damage. So she reacted really quickly and got me. It basically saved my life. And so when I woke up from the coma, it's like, wow, what a weird world this is. What happened to me? I was just asleep for a while. And then it starts to slowly dawn on me. And then I have these very strange sensations that unless you've been through experience like that, you cannot communicate, where you feel like the presence of death inside of your body. And you feel normally as you go about your day to day life, the thought of your mortality is just an idea, it's just an abstraction. But in these moments, it's a reality, it's inside of you, it's physical, it's in your blood, it's in your skin. You feel it. And that was very, very intense. And to this day, I still have those moments where I can feel it in my body. So the lesson that I learned from this and that I tell other people is that the worst things that happen to you, they can teach you so much about yourself, and by doing that, by looking at them in that way, they're not the worst things that happen to you. They're actually benefits. They're actually good things. So no matter what happens, it's how you look at them that will determine, what your fate really is. And I talk about that in the laws of human nature about your attitude towards life. And so going through that experience has been also very humbling because I realized I'm not as strong, I'm not as great as I thought I was. I have weaknesses, I have flaws I have to work on. And it also made me deeply, deeply appreciate, understand, empathize with people who are going through hardships, who are not don't have independence, that depend on other people for money or for whatever, because for years I was extremely dependent physically to get anything done. So man, it changed me in so many ways. It's for the good and for the better, I believe, but it's been a tough journey.
Thanks for sharing all that and opening up. And I'm really grateful that you made it out alive and that you've also gotten to a place where you can share openly and honestly about all the hardships that came along with that and the lessons and also how it's changed your life in some ways for the better. And you mentioned that that experience has given you a lot more empathy for people that are going through hard times. And I think that, I know in the laws of human nature, you talk about like your attitude towards life. And I think when people are going through hard times, it's important to have a certain level of optimism about what that time is teaching them and being able to move forward into a better version of themselves in the future. But I think sometimes it becomes challenging because their circumstances, like say the opposite, and they live in an environment that's unhealthy and they just are not making hardly any money. And so it can be hard to continue on with that attitude. Like, what are some of the things that have helped you along this process when there was a lot of uncertainty with your health and where things were going to go in your life that helped you continue to move forward in a way that helped you grow?
Well, the one advantage I had that people in situations like you mentioned, like 2 years after my stroke, was a little bit less, the pandemic broke out, and I witnessed a lot of people really truly suffering in a way. And then I knew people who got strokes because of COVID, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's when I was really feeling empathy for a lot of people who were suffering, who lost their jobs. But the difference for me was I've been successful. I have money, I have comfort, I have a career. So it's easy for me, it's much easier for me than people who don't have that. So I have to admit that I had those essential kind of privileges that really helped me land on my feet. But I've always thought that for the better, for the worse, that I can always push my way through any situation, that I can always change it through my effort, through my willpower. Great believer in willpower. And when you go through a stroke, two things happen. Number one, trying harder doesn't necessarily get you anywhere. So that was very humbling. So you lose the strength in your left side of your body, your left arm, for me, my left arm and my left leg, right? And pretty much in the beginning, it was almost paralyzed. It's slowly coming back. But you can't force your way back. You can't lift weights. You can't do exercises. It just takes time, right? And that's not easy for anyone, particularly for me, who's a headstrong person, to go through. So that's where I talk about the patience. On the other hand, believing that I can accomplish anything through my efforts has also been a great benefit because I do 2 hours of therapy every night, essentially, basically. That's, it's boring stuff, man. Working out isn't necessarily the most exciting thing in life, but this is 100 times more boring than working out because you're doing these like really simple exercises, lifting your leg up and down, up and down. Man, you're like, God damn, this is so boring. I can't take it, you know? Over the years, with all of the patience I've developed and being able to write my books, I've been able to push through that and do it. So, as far as the things that have helped me get through, on the one hand, being able to accept what I can't change, on the other hand, not giving up, you know? And so, if anything happens that's bad in your life, the tendency is for your energy to go down, right? Your energy levels to shift downward. You're not even aware of it. You get frustrated, you get upset with yourself, you get angry at the world, etc., etc. And slowly you're backing yourself up into a corner of your own creation. Because to get out of a bad situation, you need energy, you need drive, you need motivation. You got to get up every day and go, I can do this, I can do it. And man, it's hard. It's hard when things are against you. But if you're able to have that, if you can draw upon experiences when you were younger where you push through something by working hard at it, by not giving up, by day by day by day, by trying, by trying, by trying, you have that pattern in your life and you can return to it. So I knew that to write a book takes 4 or 5 years sometimes for me. It can be really boring and really tedious, but in the end, the rewards are great. Falling back on that and knowing that I can get through anything through effort and through sheer willpower basically saw me through this because I know other people who've gone had strokes. I have a female friend who got a stroke because of COVID. She's much younger. She's in her early 40s and she's a wonderful person, but she doesn't have the same level of drive. I mean, she also has a family to raise. She has a full-time job, so I don't it's really tough, but she's not doing those 2 hours every day kind of thing. And so it's really important to have that kind of persistence in life, especially when things are going against you.
Yeah, I think it's so important, like you said, to just not give up on yourself, be persistent, and have some level of acceptance about what you're going through. And I think what people have a hard time with as well is that they just think that their life is going to go a certain way and they're following a certain plan and it just goes, 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 and all of a sudden, boom, something happens and it throws them off. And I love how, like, I think the 48th law, I think it's like, being formless, right? And I've heard you say, I think that you believe it's like one of the most, if not the most important laws that you talk about. Why is being formless in life so important, especially as it relates to what we were just talking about?
Well, I'll go back to that. I would add one thing that I was to our previous thought here was the tendency when bad things happen to you is to become self-absorbed, right? To complain, to go inward, to think about yourself. And what you really want to do is try and force yourself in the opposite direction. And it's not been easy for me because I know I've tended to become more self-absorbed under the pressures of this, but I struggle against it. You want to actually try and find a way to be even more interested in other people, to be more interested in the world. Get outside of yourself because that is often the best therapy. It's also where power lies. But as far as assumed formlessness, the way the human brain operates is we tend to make things into categories. Our thoughts tend to be frozen. We tend to have these ideas that we get from 20 years ago, 10 years ago, a few days ago. They're set in our brain. This is how we do things. This is how things must be done. This is what the world is like. And it divorces ourselves from reality. So, to use a metaphor that's almost cliched at this point, it's like a river. Life is like a river. And as Heraclitus said, you cannot step into the same river twice because you are not the same person and it is not the same river. So everything that goes on in the world is in a state of total flux or flow. It's never static. Nothing ever stays the same. Your emotions that you're feeling right now that you think are so real and substantial, your anger, your resentment, your excitement, etc., they're just in continual flux. 10 minutes later, you're not going to feel the same way. It's this continual flow of things, right? But if your brain gets locked in the past, it gets locked in certain paradigms. This is how things have to be done. This is how the world is. You're continually falling further and further and further behind the natural flow of life. It makes your ideas cliched. It makes you a conventional person. It makes you not creative. It frustrates you. The mind should be flowing continuously. And in Zen Buddhism, the idea is your mind should never stop on a single thought. It should continually be in a state of flux and of flow, right? So a lot of people with the 48 laws of power, they don't do that, man, and it's frustrating. They look at a law and they go, "You say this law here, court attention at all costs." And then you say, "Think as you like, but behave like others." Isn't that a contradiction, Robert? No, it's not a contradiction because every circumstance in life is different. The laws aren't meant to apply to every single circumstance in your life. crush your enemy totally. You're not going to be going crushing your enemy totally every single day. You know, play a sucker to catch a sucker. That's something that applies. It applies to certain circumstances. Free your brain up from thinking in these conventional patterns where this is how things should be done. These are the laws. I made that the 48th law, and I said in that 48th law, disregard all 47 laws and the 48 laws of power. They're nonsense. Just be open to what's happening in the moment in your life and adjust your strategies to what exactly the circumstances you're facing. Don't be caught up in the past. Don't be caught up in what other people are saying. Think for yourself. Be like that flowing river. Be in the moment and be alive to every circumstance and every individual as being separate and different and unique. So that's why it's such an important law to me, at least.
Yeah. And what you said is so important because a lot of times people will read like books like yours and others and they'll just take it like literally and they're like, all right, I need to do this exact thing like all the time for me to be successful. And it's like, no, I think, like you said, situations and times are going to be different. You also want to take things like as you wish and how you can apply it to improve where you're at in your life. And there's certain elements of the book that are going to work in certain times and certain ones that are going to work in other times.
Exactly.
You mentioned that you have had some success and your work is incredibly popular, but I've also heard you say that you still at times feel like a little bit inferior based on the fact that you had success later on in your life and you kind of alluded to where you were before you wrote the 48 laws of power. So do you still like struggle with feeling a little bit inferior, and why do you think, what's at the base of that?
Well, it's probably something from my early childhood. If you could put myself on a couch and get a psychiatrist here, we could probably unearth some sense of that from my early childhood and my upbringing, where I'd come home with straight A's on my report card and it was never good enough, you know? So this kind of sense like no matter what I did, it was never good enough. So it's probably ingrained in me a sense of I'm never quite up to where I should be. Something is always a little bit inadequate. But I can say that for people who have a great deal of success in their 20s, it's often the worst thing that can happen to you because you're not prepared for it. You don't have the stability and the maturity to handle it. It goes to your head and you think, my God, I'm so wonderful. I'm so powerful. I'm so creative. I'm a god. I can do anything. Look at how many I have 2 million followers on TikTok. I'm just there's nothing I can't do, right? And it's you're setting yourself up for a disaster. In ancient Greek mythology, they call it Nemesis, the winged goddess Nemesis, who will come in and flay you because if you got too arrogant, your head was too high, and she's going to flay you and knock you down on the ground. Nemesis is going to come and get you. I had so much failure. I had so many moments of God. I'm just not making it here in life. People telling me in my early 20s, you're not a good writer. Go to law school, go to business school, novels that never got published. People in Hollywood who told me your screenplay sucks, Robert, get out of here. You know, time and again, where I wasn't measuring up. I had a lot of failure. I had a lot of things go, I know I can do something great in my life, but I'm not doing it. So there's a degree of humility built into that. And what it means is there's a bad element to it. It's probably what led to my stroke in that I worked myself too hard. But there's a good side to it as well. And the good side is that a lot of people, when they have success, like I have with the 48 laws of power, their first thought is, I don't want to lose this. I've got to repeat it. I've got to do it over again. I've got to write the 48 Laws of Power Part 2. I have to stick to this formula or I'm taking a risk and it could all disappear. For me, with my I'm never good enough mentality, I go, you can't just repeat the same thing over and over again. You've got to make your next book even better. You've got to try even harder. You have to work doubly hard to make that second book a success because second books are often the separating point that separates the men from the boys or the girls from the women, where you never get past that. Every time I start a book, I never rest on my laurels. I never rest on my success as I'm now on my eighth book. It's like, damn it, failure is at my heels. Tomorrow I could be homeless. My whole life could be destroyed. Nobody's going to read my books. And I'm serious. I do believe that. I've got to make this next book even better than all the ones before it. It drives me too hard, but it also is what ultimately led to the success that I've had. So in the end, I've learned to embrace it.
Again, thanks for being vulnerable and sharing what you shared about, stuff from your childhood and how that's impacted your outlook on writing and your success now. And like you kind of said, like success is a double-edged sword. Like there's a lot of benefits to it. It's super great. But then on the other side, it's like almost like a dog chasing its tail. Like you're still trying to have that same level of success and make sure you still are able to put out content that was as successful as the last thing each time. And each time you put yourself out there again, you like run that risk of it not being as successful. And on the other side of success is failure. And I think a lot of times people are afraid of going after success because of failure. And I've heard you talk about maybe this is why, based on what you just described, I've heard you talk about that success can be more dangerous than failure. Why do you believe that?
Well, a lot of people like I've had this experience, and I know it's common to a lot of other people in a similar situation where your book just comes out, and this is back in the day where television still was important. And you'd go on these interviews or you'd give a public talk, and everyone would be looking at you, and then you'd go back to your hotel room and you get so depressed. The high and then the low, you're alone. You're not getting that attention that you got. And it makes you feel like, God, I gotta get that attention back. I gotta have more of that attention. It's like a drug, right? And it is a drug. It is a narcotic. You become addicted to it. Attention in a success way, in a public way, and in a kind of celebrity way is very dangerous. It is a drug. We're a social animal. We want attention. It's one of our most important needs, even as an infant, is getting attention from our parent. And when you're getting attention from hundreds, from thousands of people, it goes to your head. It is like taking LSD or something. It messes with your mind. You want more of it, and it's unreal. It's an illusion. That attention that you were giving, that momentary love that you were feeling, isn't really very real. It evaporates. All those people go home. They're not thinking about you anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you have success, that attention part is the most dangerous aspect. Because what really matters in your work should not be the attention you get. It should be the satisfying feeling from creating something brilliant, bold, exciting, innovative, successful. Whether it's a business, whether it's a scientific invention, whether you're an entrepreneur or whatever it is, it's the work itself, not the attention. Because if you make the work itself the goal, then every time you're going to be focused on that. But if you make attention the goal, you can't control that. You can't control how many people are going to be watching you, how many followers you're going to have. It'll make you neurotic. It will make you go crazy trying to figure out how many likes you have here. Are people interested in your tweets, et cetera, et cetera? It'll mess with your mind. And success messes with your mind. It makes you think that you're greater than you are. It gives you grandiosity. It elevates your feet off the ground. I tell people, and this is social psychologists have confirmed this, or have basically said this before I even brought it up, that normally our opinion of ourselves is always a little bit elevated, except for some people who suffer from very low self esteem. That's a different case. But most people, they think that they're smarter than they actually are. They think that they're better looking than they actually are. They think they're more moral and right and good than they actually are. And that's okay. That's part of being human. I'm sure I have that. There's nothing wrong. There's no shame. There's no blame about it. It's human. We have to have that 6 inches above the ground. But success, 12 inches, 18 inches, 2 feet, 10 feet, in the clouds. No matter what I do, no matter what I think, it's brilliant. People are going to love me. I can't go wrong, even though I say stupid things all the time. It must be brilliant. It means that me as a person, I'm fantastic. No, it doesn't. Your work is interesting, but you as a person have limitations. You're flawed. Success is so dangerous because of that elevating process of lifting you off the ground and making you think of the attention as opposed to the work and the results.
The way you just described it, I think it's so true. And you see a lot of people, like you said, that struggle with this. I've had friends who have written popular books and they'll text me and they'll be like, man, like, cause in recovery from drugs for over 14 years. And they'll
Oh,
text me like, man, they're like, now I know what it's like to get that rush. And I'm like, well, what do you, like, are you, everything okay? And they're like, no, from like my book. And I'm like, tell me. And then they talk about, it. I'm like, yeah, man, it makes sense. And I think it's hard because like fame and attention, like you can't see it. Like you can't physically see it, but it's something that is so addictive once you feel it and it's hard to let it go. And I think along this theme, along with success and how addicting that can be, is I think it's a good time to talk about reputation because I know in the 48 laws of power, you talk about the importance of your reputation. And we've seen that people on paper can have this beautiful reputation, but once like one bad thing happens and it's on the news, boom, sometimes you don't hear about them in the news anymore, right? How can somebody, if they're looking to build a solid reputation for themselves, what are some things that you think people tend to look for when they're judging somebody?
well, I mean, reputation has a falseness to it. You know, some people have a reputation for being infallible or for being absolutely geniuses. We saw this with Sam Bankman-Fried and the FTX cryptocurrency scandal. This man has a reputation of like that 30-year-old wunderkind who's absolutely so brilliant. But the best reputation is founded on things that are solid, and you build it and you're aware of it and you construct it. The thing I tell people is, this goes back to you asked me those three things. I might have added a fourth thing in the beginning. Is humans, we judge things by their appearances. That's part of human nature. It's the animal part of us. What we can see is what we take for reality, right? So you always have a reputation. It's either a reputation that you create, that's your own work, it's like a work of art, or that other people are creating for you. Oh, he's lazy. Oh, he's stupid. Oh, he's brilliant. You're letting them define who you are. And I'm telling you, you want to be the one creating that reputation like you're creating a statue, like you're creating a work of art. The best thing is that it has a foundation of something solid. So you're not Sam Bankman-Fried and creating the aura of genius and, et cetera, but it's actually real. You actually put in the homework. You actually create a business that is built on a solid foundation, that is it's gonna last, that you've done the homework for, you've done, the details, et cetera. You're like Leonardo da Vinci. You've made something great. Okay. And now that you have that reputation and it's real and it's substantial, don't do something stupid. Don't make your next project shabby or shoddy. So people go, I thought this woman was creating something really solid and interesting, but no, they're not. And then once they doubt it, they're going to doubt everything. So you build it, you base it on something substantial, your work, the years of practice, your skill, your craft, and then you guard it like it's a treasure. It's like, the cave of Ali Baba. You've got all these jewels in this cave, and people are going to steal it. They're going to try and ruin your reputation. Guard it with your life and build on it, and don't do anything stupid. You know, I do a lot of consulting, and people come to me in situations where they've said something so insanely stupid. They've done something so dumb. It's ruined their life, right? And Robert, what can I do? How can I get this back? Well, I'm saying to myself, first of all, I don't work for people like that because there's nothing really you can do, I don't think. I say to myself, the best answer is to never say it in the first place, you idiot. Be aware of your public image. Don't get yourself caught in stupid things. Don't do things that we live in an age where everything is out there, everything is recorded, everything is public. Are you that dumb where you think that you could say something in private and it's not going to get out there? Just be careful and understand that. Understand that this is going to harm your reputation and don't let this happen.
And so thanks for sharing all that about reputation and kind of helping people decipher the difference between like somebody's, reputation about something, like they have a reputation for not showing up, they have a reputation for, being angry all the time, so on and so forth, versus like building a solid reputation and what you can do to not only build your solid reputation, but to maintain it and the importance of that. I think along the lines of that, like getting into the topic of seduction and being able to read people. I mean, because a lot of people now they're single and they're trying to, start dating, getting into a relationship. And sometimes people can have a hard time actually reading people. Like people are putting their best reputation, their best foot forward when they're meeting somebody else. What are a few things somebody can do to be able to read somebody that they're maybe out with or they're becoming friends with to know that they're actually true to who they say they are?
Everything depends on the circumstance, the individual you're dealing with. So it's a little bit false to generalize too much here. But the basic thing is in the laws of human nature, I have a chapter on nonverbal communication. And it's really in essence the subject of The Art of Seduction, my second book. When that book came out, I told people, I said that seduction is a language, but it's not really a language of words. It's a language of gesture. It's a language of the senses, of smells, of the sound of a person's voice, of things about them physically that get under your skin. It's a language of gestures and behavior. And your behavior, what you do, how you carry yourself, your level of confidence, it's nothing you say, but people read it, right? Because we don't realize it, but 95% of human communication, I'm just throwing a number out there, but it's somewhere in that vicinity, is nonverbal. But we don't realize it, right? You're actually, every day of your life, when you're interacting with people at the office or in your home, unconsciously or subconsciously, you're paying attention to their tone of voice, the look in their eyes, their posture, and the simple gestures that they're doing, like whether they're late, how messy their room is, etc. These details, you're reading them, okay? The main problem that you have in life is you have this antenna built into your head, like an insect's antenna, that detect what people are really thinking, whether they really like you, whether they really think that your ideas are great. You don't know how to use that antenna, right? Because you're not able to get outside of yourself. You're so damn self-absorbed. You're always thinking about yourself. So you're on a date. I'm a man, so I'm going to put myself naturally in the position of a man meeting a woman or something. It's the first time, and you're thinking, does she like me? Am I saying the right things? How's she responding to me? She should really like me, blah, 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 blah. You're thinking about yourself. You're so inside of yourself that you're actually not seeing the fact that she's not responding to you at all, that her body language shows that she's disconnecting from you. Whereas you have the power if you cut off, there's a little knob there and you turn off the interior monologue, click, it's off. You're inside of her, you're thinking inside of her world, her mind, you're paying her attention. She's going to connect to you and the body language will shift. They've noticed things like mirroring, so that when people are connecting and clicking, if you cross your legs, the other person will cross their legs. If you touch your hair, the other person will touch. That's a sign that they're unconsciously connecting to you in some way, right? So, A, you have to be attuned to that. You have to click off that interior monologue, that me that's constantly playing throughout your brain. Get inside them, the other world, and then realize that your attention to them, your focus on them, your ability to think what they're thinking is the most seductive power in the world. No man or woman on the planet can resist it because we're all starving for attention and recognition. And when someone has the antenna and it's doing the little things that an antenna do, and you're focused on them and you're looking at them and you're in their world, I never get that from anybody else. I never get that from my family, from it's like a drug, it's addictive, right? You have the power to do that. Cut off the self-absorption, get inside their world and focus on them, and they're going to fall under your spell. So to me, and it's hard in this world today because people have lost that skill. It's your damn dating apps that have destroyed socializing, right? Instead of having to actually go out in the world and actually put your reputation on the line in a bar or a cafe and literally seduce your way and interest the other person, you just go flipping through a screen, accept, reject, accept, reject. What crap? You're not building any social skills. I'm sorry. And you're going to pay for it later in life when you don't know how to pay attention to people. and through your own words and your own body language, connect to them. You're depending on technology for everything. Get rid of that nasty habit and learn how to actually develop social skills in a seduction in any kind of situation. So that's enough of my rant on that.
You're right. It's hard these days, right? Because people are so used to using technology to meet people and to connect with people, and there's no app to teach you how to build social skills in a real life setting. Like, I mean, obviously there's tips, there's tricks, but the only way to do it is to actually get into the arena and actually meet people and start talking to people. And along those lines, like once you meet somebody and you're out with them and paying attention to them, obviously you said is super important, and getting into their mind, what are some ways, you guys using this same guy as an example, like how can this guy begin to understand if this person that he's out with is actually somebody that could be a potential match or connection for him?
I didn't quite answer your question before because you were saying, how can you tell whether someone is actually being who they are, whether they're
Yeah, yeah,
lying
yeah.
to you, whether they're deceiving? And that's kind of backing up to what we were just talking about, where on a screen, on your phone, with your dating app, whatever it is, you can't really tell. Even though there might be a recording of them, people are master actors. They're good at deceiving, right? And when they're on that app or they're recording themselves, they're putting their best foot forward. They're looking their best, they're controlling what they say. You have no idea who they are. And the ability to judge people who are lying, who are deceiving, it can only be developed in person. You're never going to get it through Tinder or whatever app you're using, right? Because there's no filter on that for it. You have to use your eyes, you have to use your own physical intelligence. And in the laws of human nature, I talk about there are people who've written brilliant books about decoding body language, and they go into more detail than I do. So you should definitely read their books. But you look at their eyes, and when people are genuinely happy or excited or interested in you, there's a difference in the way the eyes focus, in the way the whole face is. So you'll notice that somebody's looking at you, right? And it's deceptive. Do you think they're interested? But the rest of their face doesn't seem very excited or very interested. These kind of discrepancies are very revealing, and they show that they're trying to actually pretend that they're interested in you through a fake smile or through eyes that kind of look like they're attending. But when somebody's really interested, or really excited, or really likes you, they don't control those things. The whole face lights up. The mouth, when you're really interested in somebody, this is a fake smile. There's a tenseness to it, right? But when you're really laughing or smiling, the whole face is animated and you know it. You can feel it. You're just not paying attention. You're being stupid. You're not looking. You're not seeing that they're actually not that interested in you, that their eyes are showing one thing, but the mouth is showing something else. Or they actually are responding to you because their whole face is responding to you, but you're not paying attention. Their posture towards you, right? Are they, if you're standing, in a party, are they square on you? Are they looking at you straight? Or are they looking at you while their body is kind of positioned to a side? And then they're kind of looking over at other people. They're a bit distracted. They're not into you at all. The tone of voice is a total language that you have to learn to pay attention to. Actors whose whole life is acting learn how to control the facial muscles to kind of give the a certain impression. Training the voice to give impressions is really hard. So when people are trying to fake it, they can't fake their voice, right? An excited person, a person who's interested in you, it has a certain lilt to it. It has a certain rhythm, a cadence that reveals itself. And when they're not interested in you, the senses are short or whatever. There's a certain otherness to it that you're not detecting. So pay attention to all these things and then pay attention to the gestures and the behavior. Okay. People who are chronically late, it's your third date and the third time they're late. Don't excuse that and go, well, they're a busy person, blah, blah, blah. Your antenna should be going, this person has a flaw. I'm not interested in them. They're late now. They're going to always be late. They're not considerate. They're not polite. They're only thinking about themselves. Read their behavior. When it comes time for giving gifts, a common mistake that people will make is to give the gift that's most expensive, some generic thing that they think is going to impress you. But if somebody gives you a gift in which it's clear that they've been thinking about you, they're thinking about something you said, about who you are as an individual, about something about your own personality, a thoughtful gift. That is a thoughtful person. That's a gold. That's like gold. They're going to be thoughtful for 10 years down the line. That's somebody you can marry, you can live with, right? Pay attention to the little things, the gestures, the gifts, whether they're late, whether they're thoughtful, whether they're considerate, whether they're paying attention to you, the tone of voice. It's a language. Learn the language, or no app in the world will ever help you.
I love that. Pay attention to the little things, get good at recognizing the nonverbal cues and pay attention to their habits. And if they're late, are they, engaging in the conversation? What's their tone like? What's their smile like? I love that. I'm curious along the lines of nonverbal cues and human psyche. We've spent almost an hour together. Like, what have you picked up on as far as me?
Well, I don't know. You're a little bit harder to read because you're not like your head isn't going up and down as I'm talking. You're not smiling, et cetera, et cetera. You're being kind of a sphinx. But then when it's over, you're sort of agreeing, et cetera, et cetera. You seem like someone who's trying to control it a little bit, who's trying not to reveal too much. Right? You're a little bit that's a little bit your nature, right? And maybe that's a defensive quality on your part for good reasons or whatever, not judging you in the least. But I know for me, and it's not a good thing necessarily, because even the great master 50 Cent pointed out this flaw in me. When people are talking, I'm nodding my head going, yeah, and I'm kind of doing that kind of stuff. You're not doing that at all. And that's powerful. In a meeting, that's very powerful to not give away your emotions. In a podcast, it's not like it's disconcerting or anything, but I notice that you're not giving away those clues that some other people sometimes give. So that would be one impression.
Well, thanks for pointing that out. No, I'm definitely engaged in the conversation in the sense where I'm really enjoying it. I'm also like just hyper focused on like listening to what you have to say and
And maybe you're a little bit nervous or something, and you're thinking about what you're gonna say next and all of that. So, I say that with a caveat there. So, and I understand that when you're interviewing, you have to be one step ahead. You have to be thinking about the next thing. So you can't necessarily be in the moment. So
But I'm also like you said, like one of my flaws, like one of the things that I think makes me successful is that I set high standards for myself and I push myself. But one of the flaws with that is that I do kind of try to, not control things, but more like I'm hard on myself to make sure the conversation is going like well, and that I'm doing my best. And so I always try to make sure that I'm like just hyper focused and just paying attention to what you're saying and then just trying to digest it and then like reflect back like what you're saying and then also like lead to the next point of the conversation.
it's hard. It's a hard skill. It's like what Ginger Rogers said about dancing with Fred Astaire. She had to dance going backwards in high heels and be able to like keep all those things together in her mind and all the steps. You're like doing a dance where you're trying to be in the moment, but you're also thinking ahead. It's not easy. Just some interviewers, you know, like the Oprah Winfreys of the world, not to say that that's the ideal, they're like physically engaging with you. And that's not your style. And that's probably a good thing because you figured out your style and you're good at it. So
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I am, I guess, more reserved when I'm like having a conversation like this because I also don't want to necessarily just make it about me. I want to make it about highlighting your work and like showcasing some of the stuff that you've worked on and also some of your personal story that I think maybe you don't talk as much about and you talk about it, but I know a lot of the podcasts you do, it's focused a lot on your work. And now that I got a little vulnerable and was able to like get some feedback on you, I want to go back to social connections because I know in your books you don't talk about like not having friends. Obviously, you talk about the importance of that, but you talk about like being careful about the types of people that you spend time with. And this is something that I talk about a lot. One of the things that I often will say is surround yourself with people that have common futures or common pasts. That's like my thing. What are your thoughts on friendships and what types of people should people stay away from if they can when it comes to their social circles?
I can't remember if it's law number 10 or law, I think it's 10 in the 48 laws of power is the most important. It's called infection. And the idea is we humans are very susceptible to the emotions of the people around us. It's a primate thing. It's part of our mirror neurons. It's part of being a social animal. And there are people out there who are just magnets of negative energy, right? And you'll notice it if you look at a distance. If they had a resume of their life and they gave it to you, which is just a fantasy on my part, you would see in there all kinds of relationships that lasted 2 months, all kinds of terrible things that happened to them, people who did awful things, bosses who fired them, abuse this, problem there, blah, 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 blah. A pattern of endless drama, right? And when you meet them, you don't have that resume in front of you. You're only seeing them and they seem very dramatic, very colorful, very interesting, maybe even very charismatic. You get in a relationship with them, a friendship with them, and so slowly you start seeing that all that blaming of other people, all the drama is coming from within them. It's their nature, they're recreating it. They are the source of all the misery and pain in their life. They're drama queens, they're drama kings. They thrive on creating negative energy off of them, something that has to do with their childhood. It doesn't matter where it comes from. Get away from it. It's going to draw you in. Don't try and change it. Don't try and empathize with it. Don't try and change them. Get the hell away. They're going to infect you with negative energy. They're gonna make your life full of drama. You're gonna waste 10 years of your life trying to get away from them. It's not worth it. On the other hand, there are people who have a nice disposition, who aren't Pollyannish, but they generally have a positive attitude. They get things done, they're constructive. They actually say they're gonna start a business and they do it, right? They have that kind of energy. They're gonna infect you with the other side of it. You're gonna go, "Hmm, person X, he or she, they actually got that thing done. I wanna be the same like them. I wanna do that as well. I'm gonna try and do the same thing," right? So people who have good luck, who are fortunate, who make good things happen for themselves, those are great people to be around. And it doesn't matter whether they have the same political beliefs as you, whether they come from the same part of the country, whether you both like the same sports or the same teams. It's more the fact that they are people that have good character, good positive qualities. They're going to infect you with that. And that's the kind of friendship and associations that you want in life. Also be aware of the following phenomenon. In two of my books, I talk about envy. I go very deeply into the subject of envy. In the 48 Laws of Power, it's Law 46 or something, never appear too perfect. And in the Laws of Human Nature, I believe it's around chapter 10, law number 10. Envy is an incredibly potent human emotion. It drives a lot of human behavior, but nobody ever talks about it. And where envy becomes a problem, where it's most prevalent, is among friends, believe it or not. Many, many friendships are destroyed because of the phenomena of envy. And oftentimes, people will befriend you who actually envy you, and they're disguising it. And so, a clear sign of that will be somebody you met a week ago, and suddenly they want to be your BFF. They just love you. They think you're the greatest thing that ever happened. They're emailing you all the time. They're texting you. They're flattering you. You go, wow, that's great. Yeah, sure, I want to be their friend. It doesn't necessarily come from a good place. It might be coming up from a place of envy. And I talk in that book, particularly in the laws of human nature, how you can identify people who are envious, who it's not real with. So you want to be aware of that phenomena as well when it comes to friendships.
I love what you said about that, about like just making sure that you like set hard boundaries with the types of people that are negative, like you said, because you will start to become, dragged into that world. And then also making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that are doing good things and that have your best interests at heart. And then now like we're shifting into envy, which is like one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, in that, you talked about how a lot of envy happens amongst peer groups, and that you should pay attention to where people aren't being, truthful, for their intentions and how they're interacting with you. How can you tell if somebody's lying to you about what they want from you? How can they tell if they're not being a true friend? Is it the nonverbal cues, or there's other methods that people can use to pick up on that?
Well, if you ever get a sense, if you ever hear that they've talked behind your back just once, that they've said, they've revealed something you said to them to a third party, be very worried, be very cautious. People who gossip, who say things behind your back, you can never trust them. They do it once, maybe forgive them once, don't say anything. If it happens twice, cut them out of your life, be as ruthless as possible, right? They are often people who are prone to envy. I mean, the thing is it's not easy. And that's why we continually fall for these types, because they tend to pour on the charm when they first meet you. And what you need to recognize is that interest genuine or does it stem from massive insecurities? People who are envious envy you for the good things that you have. They envy you for your relationships. They envy you for your success, for your career, for your family. They feel inferior. They are riddled with insecurities, right? But they're brilliant. They're geniuses. They're masters at disguising it. They don't come up to you and say, I'm so insecure, blah, 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 blah. They hide it and you're not aware of it. And then, so what you want to do is you want to see whether their flattery, whether their interest in you is actually covering up a lot of insecurities. And that's not that tricky to decipher. We kind of know when people are confident and when they're not, when they're insecure. We may not know it at the first time we meet them, but body language reveals a lot, right? And that's what I talk about. Read that chapter and get one of those great books on body language because an envier is going to feign love of you. They're going to feign interest in you. They're going to fake thinking that your ideas are great. You have to be able to pick that up. You have to be able to discern what's real and genuine, what they really like, and what stems from insecurities and all kinds of weaknesses. And so being able to detect insecurity in people. So I talk in the laws of human nature of when you see anybody giving any kind of overt signals, being too strong in a way, they're too interested in you, they're too confident, they're too masculine. They're too feminine. They're too this, they're too that. They're hiding, they're disguising the opposite. They're full of insecurities. Their way of compensating for their insecurities is to cover it over with the opposite. Who would ever think that somebody is a mess of insecurities, a bowl of wobbly jelly, when they're just projecting all this strong, fierce, masculine energy, etc.? It's fake. People who try too hard, who go over the top with a quality, are hiding the opposite most often in life. It's very hard to wrap your head around that concept. Someone who's so confident is actually very, very insecure, but it's a true fact of human nature. So look at these overt qualities and don't take them at face value and try and discern whether there might be an element of deception in there as well.
And so I guess I'm assuming if people are portraying some deceptive or some, false tendencies, or they're coming across as envious, or your antennas going off or whatever, that something is just not truthful with that person. They probably haven't done some work on their dark side, which I know is another theme of the laws of human nature. And as we kind of bring the conversation to a close, I think it would be really cool to talk about the dark side of human nature and why it's important for people to pay attention to it for themselves and how they can address it.
Well, it's a paradox of the culture that we live in. Everyone is so much full of virtue signaling and being the social justice warrior. We're all such saints. We're all such paragons of virtue. We always support the right causes. We're always so moral, so righteous. We're just the best people on the planet, right? On the other side of the culture, we're obsessed with Machiavellian, manipulative people with dark energy. Look at our entertainment, look at our television, look at the films that are on, all of the things in popular culture. It's riddled with those Machiavellian, dastardly, evil, manipulative types, the serial killers, the deceivers, the con artists. We're obsessed with them. We can't get enough of it. We want more and more and more and more of these stories. So at the same time, you have this sunny, saintly virtue signaling going on. You have this other side where we're just obsessed with the steamy, dark aspect of human nature. What is the truth here? What is really going on? Well, the truth is that all humans have a dark side. And in the chapters where I address that in the laws of human nature, I discuss where that comes from. I'm not going to go into it now, but there's a reason for it in early childhood while we all learn to disguise that energy that got punished by our parents for acting out too much. We repress it. Okay. And as we get into our 20s and further on, we become these socialized creatures that are always pretending to be great. They're always pretending to be so nice and polite. And that dark energy that we all have, the aggressiveness, the tendency to feel envy, the tendency that we are the best, the tendency to always try and get your own way around things, to be willful. It's there. It's just you've pushed it down. You tried to make it so nobody sees it. You try and make it so you don't even see it. You're not even aware of it. And then it comes out in ways that you're not even aware of. You say something at a party that's nasty, that offends somebody, and then you go, "Oh, I'm sorry. That really wasn't me talking. I don't know where that came from. It's not what I really think." It is actually what you really think. It is actually who you are. You're just not aware of yourself, right? And so the first thing that you need to do is to look in the mirror and go, I, Robert Greene, I, Doug Bopst, I have a dark side. I have dark energy. I have aggressive impulses. I have pride. I have anger. I have envy. I have lust. I have all the nasty things. I can be manipulative, right? Just be human for a change and admit that you have these flaws and don't go acting like you're the exception. It is built into how we're wired as human beings. Accept it. And from that point on, try and take that dark energy and use it for something constructive. So let's say that dark energy is a lot of anger, a lot of maybe even hatred, kind of aggressive energy that people have. You can't get rid of it. It's just going to try to get rid of it will destroy you. Channel it into something productive. Channel it into a cause that you believe in. You believe that global warming or sexual abuse or whatever it is something that's just so evil and awful, which they are, etc. I'm going to take all of my energy, all of it, and I'm going to turn it into advancing this cause. That's a productive way of using your dark side. You feel aggressive, you willful, you want to assert yourself. All right. I'm going to take that ambition and I'm going to be the best person at my particular job or career. It's not going to be fake. I'm not going to hurt people, but I'm going to be the best damn writer out there in the world. I'm going to have the books that are going to sell the best. My music is just going to be better than anybody else's music. That's a productive way of taking your competitive energy. Or you had a lot of bad things happen to you in childhood that you carry around with you, like this weight on your shoulders your whole life, this dark energy that you've never come to terms with. Express it in a work of art, express it, or in a business, express it in a cause, express it, show people that this is a reality in a film or in a book. And people will love it because everybody else who's had that kind of experience will be attracted to it. Use that pain that you have and put it into something creative and express it to the world. These are just some of the ways to take that dark energy from destroying you, because if you don't deal with it, and putting it out in the world and making it productive and social and helpful for everybody else.